Tonight,
Dungeon Doomhands,
Chris,
let's talk
we are talking
lore,
about
a podcast.
things that slow the game down. We've done a lot of talking about combat, because combat slows the stuff down a little bit, depending on your style and what the players want. I always found that having a larger, I'm finding that having a larger big boss, one of them, is a lot easier to run than having many of them. So I don't want to spend the whole time on combat, so I'll just say that we've talked about it and we've come up with solutions like, if you have a lot of zombies, roll them, maybe the left side of the room goes one roll and the other side of the room goes another roll, and they all do the similar action. I would ask the players first, because some players want to have, they think it's cheap if, I roll a D20 and they all get hit or not. You came up with a point before too, and I'm just going to sort of blitz this attack thing. You came up with a cool idea, I think. I think you said something like, and I think you're percentage-wise, you do a lot of percentages, I think, to me at least. That's what I say. You might say tomato, and I hear, well, according to the zombies, they would usually hit X amount of times. And so maybe if you're doing you don't even have to roll. You can say, okay, there's 100 zombies. Statistically, 30% of them hit. And so you just keep doing that until it's done. That's a way to get through a very large combat fight. Am I missing anything from because you had some good points on the combat stuff, which I don't want to focus on this time. But planning the large encounters, talking to the players, make sure everyone's engaged and knows what you're doing, because you don't want to say, okay, 30% hit you. You want to say, you describe it. Spend more time describing it than, take the time that you've saved on the rolls and the individual guys and describe it. That would add the immersion. And then combat in general, ask your players to be prepared for what they want to do, I would also say. Now, I haven't been really great as a DM doing that. I kind of let you guys learn your characters, but you can always say, we'll come back to you, and come back to the guy.
Right.
So, any other things combat-wise? I don't want to spend too much, because it's roll. You can talk about combat slowing down Dungeons and Dragons forever, and I'm sure that it's not just Dungeons and Dragons. I'm sure it's most role-playing games or board games in general. Any type of action that you need to count and do simple math. Gonna slow it down. So
yeah. Well, I think there's times when you want to slow down the game, times when you want to speed it up, and I feel there's times when the game does slow, but you can still keep the conversation and the story going.
Yes.
Of carrying that role play through your combat, or banter back and forth, and there's an idea of every encounter is not a combat encounter until it is. So it doesn't always have to be a fight, and it can be a fight that ends, or a conversation that turns into one. But it doesn't have to slow it down.
Yeah.
But you can also lead your players in with a story of if someone has a hard time deciding what to do, describe the scene around them right before their turn and keep that immersion going. But if we want to get out of the combat,
So what else? So
aspect.
Let's talk about now. This will be more fun, because we have nothing planned for the. Cause we sort of listed all the combat stuff in previous Let's Talk Lore. You can go check out our how to use hordes, how to combat hordes, and how to play combat, etc. in the previous Let's Talk Lores. But what are other things that slow down the game, in initiative and outside of initiative?
Puzzles.
Puzzles are tough.
Yeah. When everyone just sitting around for 5 minutes trying to figure out a riddle, and no one has the confidence to try it in fear of a massive trap. But if you think of why it slows down, what is the purpose of the slowdown? An obstacle, or is it something mechanical in the play?
Yeah, and when do you so like a puzzle? I feel like a good puzzle. Now I've had puzzles, and just as like a mediocre, intermediate, I would say DM. I think I've graduated from beginner to intermediate. I think that when you design a puzzle, it's got to have. You have to also. It doesn't really matter if the characters figure out the exact puzzle, because you're going to eventually let them through. But making that let them through valuable to the players is very important.
Right.
But to make it go quicker, like I've tried things like actually have the players go in initiative. So you don't have players like, well, what do you think? Unless that conversation is happening in, to motivate them to go forward. I say, okay, there's a puzzle that involves everyone. Let's have everyone do one action of an initiative. Go. It's your turn, your turn, your turn. That also slows it down, so you gotta watch out for that.
Right.
But as a DM, you sort of have to have clues laid out. So if you're in a room and there's a button, and the button fills the room with water, and there's another button somewhere that dumps the water, and it turns out that where you dump the water, like that's the hole that you're supposed to escape, let's just say, or whatever. You have to describe. You have to be able to use the detail in the room to describe it. So, like, you do a perception check. You notice that the water in the room. It seems like the strands of moss have been pulling. The water's been pulling in one direction. So why is the moss being pulled there? Is there a drain?
Right. Well, it's feeling like you've given enough clues that the puzzle can be solvable in the way that you think it can be.
Yeah. And then is it okay, you think, to and also viewers, if you're out there, do you think it's okay to let the person who's doing the investigation, or after they've been there for, let's just say a round, maybe 2 rounds of initiative, whatever that would be, 5, 10, 15 minutes. That might be too long too. Do you think it's okay if someone rolls a nat 20 just to say you notice that you figured out the puzzle?
Well, I've used clues in the past. Like if there's a riddle or a puzzle of some sorts, and I know there's a couple wizards that can I remember some history or some story? I'm like, yeah, roll, and if you get above 15 or something, I'll give you a clue or a hint, something clever that I can think of to guide you in the right direction. It's not like give you the answer, but I'll lead you on a little bit, and it makes it feel like more of a conversation of you're discovering little bits, but still solving it.
Okay. But what would little bits of clues? So when do you give up? Essentially, is what I'm.
Some doors aren't meant to be opened, and if they are meant to be open, then the puzzle needs a way to break. Because if you can't solve it the easy way, there's the hammer. Just break down the door.
Right, but if it's a puzzle, I don't know. I had one puzzle where it was you had to do it because each person became the symbol that you guys chose. I was gonna do it where each person goes up to a pillar and then they become they touch the symbol of the bear, and then the other person touches the symbol of the eagle. And once you touch all the symbols, once one person touches one symbol, that carries on to the next room. So now, but then it becomes easier to do. So carrying puzzles that carry over, where it's a very easy puzzle. You just touch the symbol, and it lights up. And now, when another character touches another symbol, if they've already touched a symbol, the other one that they've touched goes away, and then they move on to the next room.
Right.
And there's something else about the symbol. So maybe it's like a simple, actually I should do that. That's pretty cool. Like you have like a bear, a tiger, an alligator, and something else, and a cow. And if the person that touches the bear doesn't kill the bear in the next room, the bear comes back. Right? And so it has to be the person that goes. But to make it shorter, to get back to the point, to make puzzles shorter, I feel like having descriptions. I think we're both agreeing. I think like making the dungeon master's descriptions a little bit more important than actually solving the puzzle. And
you can guide them in the right direction. Like if they're discussing their plans or ideas, you can chime in like, well, your memory does think that's a great idea. If they're getting stuck.
Rock Goblin Art from Instagram said during the bosses thing, he said, "For my big bosses, I move them around and give them dialogue. I don't even worry about them getting attacks of opportunity." Of course. And this goes to your point, the dialogue, the free action, but maybe the free action should be a turn,
or on initiative count 15 they monologue.
Ha ha ha, you suck. every 15
or every player's turn, why not just chime in?
And you go now. His name is Meta Monster, and he just like, I know the initiative order. It's like, this guy sucks.
That's a surefire way to get your players to hate your villain so much when they finally do kill him.
Yeah, this guy ruins immersion. Destroy him. All right, other things that slow down the game. Puzzles, I guess, like riddles too. Like riddles are tough. They're also puzzles. I think that they're sometimes more fun and more engaging than sometimes puzzles. I feel like people actually get together, and I don't do initiative rolls on that. I feel like they really think, and some people are just like, this is not for me. Chris, I think you've been like, I'm gonna not, Booterbot and Jake are very good at riddles. So it's funny because when I do the riddle, like how hard I want the riddle to be, or how you first off with the riddles relate it to the dungeon, because people are I would say if I was a player and you asked me a riddle about something in the dungeon, it should be themed. I would say to, I had an issue with the whale. Because I did riddles, and one of the random riddles I made was about TV, 1986 TV cartoon character. I was like, this can't be like that doesn't relate to this,
How's this in the temple in this world?
What's a TV? Again, descriptions though. So if they're having troubles with the riddle, maybe they do a history check and you give them a thought or of a book that they read or something. Chris, name me a book you've read.
The anthology of Agoth Doomhand's Farms.
Right. So you remember hearing something about, the farmers loving to go watch a 1986 TV show in between, planting seeds and that type of thing. to speed it up. And I think like funny clues like that, like interactive clue, when it relates to the players, it wouldn't be that stupid and that funny. It could be. actually creates more of an immersive world than the players suffering from not being able to answer it.
Yeah, I agree.
Other things that slow down.
Planning. Indecision.
So, like, what do you mean planning wise?
Well, you're partying, figuring out where they want to go, what they want to do, how they want to do it. There's the fear of indecision. And I always find it's easier to help push people along and guide them in the right direction when they're discussing their ideas, just to keep them moving along.
So, like, what would you do? So, like, okay, you're locked in, I guess.
Well, I'll just ask.
When we were in the mountains, you were DMing.
Yeah.
And we decided to go down the wrong path.
Well, not necessarily.
Not the wrong, but we went down the path towards the giants.
Right.
It got increasingly harder and more dangerous.
Yeah.
As we got, as well it should.
That was the point.
Right. Or maybe that wasn't a good example. Maybe when we were running away from the giants, we were like, should we, Adam and I were trying to figure out, hold on, you're a level 20 barbarian, or a level 12 barbarian. I'm a level 12 paladin. If we roll high here, and subscribe, by the way, if we roll high and subscribe, we could potentially do some damage and kill a couple of these guys. Chances of killing 6 of them, though, not very high. So, like, you were sort of like, I don't know if that's, like, I don't forget how you did it, but you sort of were like, I would potentially think running is better.
Yeah. Well, it's the challenge is getting the image of the story that's in your head transmitted to them so that they can have the appropriate response that you're trying to elicit. So if you're trying to get the sense of fear behind people, sometimes you just have to tell them. Normally in this situation, your character would be terrified. And you would never think to stop and try and take on this many of these kind of creatures, even with a buddy who's kind of strong.
Yeah.
But you're like, but it's your choices.
Yes.
I'm making you aware of what your choices will entail.
Yeah.
And I think if you're something I'm very open with is letting people be aware of the choices that they're making. Like, I know it's fun to hide things, but like, let their choices matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't save a stupid decision. Don't let Matt, MVP of deaths, I actually think you guys are tied, run down the hallway where he knows it's booby trapped and gets slaughtered. Like, let him go do that. If that's what he's going to go do, you go
fair.
I've already warned him once. There was a massive explosion.
I spent how long demining that prior tunnel? Like 15 minutes of in-game time going and checking and disarming 4 traps.
Your investigations and our high-leveled rogue, and the rogue, disarmed, found the traps, and did it. And Matt was like, all right, you guys go down that way. I'm gonna fucking face plant over there.
You guys are gonna do that again down this hallway? Okay, I'm just gonna go run down this one by myself.
Meanwhile, the treasure that he was running after, because he wanted to go get the item, you could have easily gotten it if you just got it in the other room. That was so funny. Okay, here's another thing that would slow down games potentially. A death. Player death.
It doesn't have to.
Have your character prepared. Have a backup character prepared.
Well, there needs to be time. If the character matters, there's gonna be time of people, because they're not just gonna be like, oh well, my
the shock
party member is well, no, like the other people in the party, they're not gonna be. It's like, I'll leave them there for the wolves. Just carry on their way. There's gonna be some like banter and like some comments and like carrying the body, so that player is gonna be there in the story, and you can engage them for like how they would have wanted this done, how they would have told their friends about this.
I think I should start letting players, to make deaths a little bit funnier and crazier, and also just like giving people time to figure out what they want to do. I think that the player should have a goodbye. So let's just say like let's just say Rena got splashed with acid and he died, which he did. R.I.P. Rena. Let's just say like he turns around, and as his skin is like falling down from his skin and bones are showing, he wants to give a final send-off to his...
Always. The final words. Do you have any final words you want to say here in this moment? Absolutely.
Or like you could describe it like the wave of acid that you're going to die from is about to hit your body. What is it that you want to convey to your friends? That but that's also a player's choice. That's a player's choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess you're right. That doesn't have to be bogged down, but I do recommend though that if it's mid-game, players have a player. I mean, Matt did that well. He had a player lined up and ready to go. It was a female, and you guys opened a door, and there was a female captive ready to go. But don't forget the player though. Yeah, the PC. Those guys are...
Yeah. Sometimes they need some time.
It's like
because you build a connection, you have emotion when your character dies, or when something happens.
Yeah, especially when the DM accidentally kills him. It's like that.
Accidentally on purpose, right?
Yeah, on purpose, accidentally. Listen, the dice don't lie. If I had rolled ones on all the hit die, it would have.
Yep. Fair.
You ever see what the hell is that movie called? The beer drinking, Beer Fest, and the guy that plays Farva in Super Troopers dies, and then like 10 minutes later, his brother. It's like, wait a minute, brother. You're exactly like him. You even smell like him. All right, can we call you him, and then we'll just.
Exactly.
That's hilarious. Other things we've talked about, travel time being one of the things, and there's a great travel time episode on Let's Talk Lore. Just type in Dungeon Doomman travel time, where we talk about how to speed travel time up. Travel time is a immersive quality that I find that is lacking in some D&D. You travel from A to B, but in Lord of the Rings, in the book, like I feel like Gandalf was searching for clues about what the ring was for like a year. Like he traveled a year. I mean, think about how far the guy has to travel on horse to get to a library, to go to another area, to go up into the mountain, down into the thing, and find out what the hell that thing was, and then come back. Like, so you're going on these epic quests. It's going to take a long time. Now, I don't know how much time something like Lord of the Rings was supposed to take start to finish, but it's years. And so you're traveling. You should remember that, but it doesn't mean it has to be slow. So one of the things that I created for our Artemisian Forest campaign, which eventually will be created, is a time travel chart. So the way that I dealt with it was, okay, you're going to go from A to B, and we didn't do this. I wish we had, and I will create a time travel chart for our next traveling. Maybe I'll do it for the air travels. It takes you, you're walking in the forest. You have a random encounter table that we rolled. Let's say one, and it was the wall. Now you open it, the whole thing plays out. Now you decide to go from this encounter, and you guys move on in the forest? Well, you go to your random travel time table and you roll. How long does that happen? Or how long does it take you to travel from A to from encounter to encounter? The travel time table will tell you, half hour all the way up to whatever the 20th one was. I think it was a couple hours. And exhaustion happens at a certain point. I think it's 8 hours.
Right.
You get one.
Well, 8 hours of travel a day or something.
Yeah. So you're on foot for that would be like 20 if you rolled it. But let's just say you rolled a 10. You have 4 hours of travel.
Right.
And you're going to roll now again. No, you're not going to roll. The way I did it was you have a sense. One of my great. I try to do the immersive who's leading the group. Okay, this guy's leading the group. Well, when you go in, you sense like a fog. You smell something, and then depending on how you roll, if you roll enough on your investigation or your history or your medicine or whatever it is, there's dead trees and there's scrapes on the ground indicating that there's a beast coming up ahead, or you hear druidic melody, and if you roll enough, you get inspired, and so on and so forth. And then the travel's over, but you have traveled. You've told them it's 4 hours. You don't have to have that be 4 hours of travel in game time. It can be 2 rolls, boom, boom, real quick. But it sort of tells you, you guys are exhausted. You are inspired. Not all things traveling have to be negative, as much as I love to kill everyone. And traveling doesn't have to be slow or fast. It can be artfully done. And I think that table that I should just go ahead and finish the table and drop it in the comments when I'm done.
It's something that I've been using recently to speed up travel a lot is just do weather rolls. So if I know it's all right, it's going to take a couple days, I don't really have anything that I want to throw in the meantime. It's all right, someone roll me a d20 for the weather. And if it's a nat 1 or a nat 20, maybe something cool happens and you figure out something on the fly. Or it's a storm's rolling in, or it's very windy today, or it's bright and sunny day, and who knows may come of what comes of that. But it's a way to describe the day, and maybe you pass along information of how the day was traveling in that sort of weather. You're traveling on the path, it's really sunny and it's hot. You see a bunch of people camped over underneath a tree taking a rest from the sun. Nothing really happens, but you're able to describe the day with a little bit of variance for how it might be. And then the storm rolls in as someone rolls a 3.
I like that. And it adds a different element also to the rolls matter. It adds a different, now the guy rolled a 3 and there's a big storm. Not the biggest storm. Maybe there's not lightning damage that you would have gotten from the nat 1.
Or some knives flying down at you.
Random knife storm, which I got from some random encounter, which was hilarious. Maybe the storm affects your rolls. Disadvantage on things. That's really cool, and making the travel matter. So
and then it's one roll for a day of weather. It's all right, and a full day passes, nothing really happens.
Because traveling doesn't necessarily slow the game down, but you say, okay, you guys are on here, the ship, or you're traveling the woods or desert or whatever. You have downtime. You guys can do whatever you want. Sometimes that action of the DM saying you have downtime, or you can, you're out of initiative and blah blah blah, that can slow it down. But having some of these rolls sort of create okay, now you're going to roll this, and you still have downtime, and now you're going to roll this, and that's the response, and then now you're there. A structure to it. A little bit of a structure to it could help the pauses in the game.
Well, and it's also a nice time to say if there's any conversations or role play that you want to have,
do it.
now's the time so that they can be talking while you're setting up all your notes or whatever you need to for the next thing that's going to happen.
With that, another thing that I've noticed that when we're playing, because we are in big cities, and I think I want to go out of big cities. I want to go back to like a landscape of some kind. I loved the mountain. That was cool. I love the forest. That was my OG. The desert was nice. Even the ocean was cool. Just the random encounters from the ocean. It's just hard for me to do sky encounters as much because it's not. There's no land. There's no water to swim in. You jump off the boat, you're dead. You know.
I have an idea for you.
What?
For one of my favorite dungeons that you've made is the mountain that we went inside of.
Ooh, vertical.
Yeah, so there could be some old mountain that's broken that we have to go inside of.
His brother.
Yeah.
Which I've been talking about for a while. I think his name was Trank or something like that. The volcano looking for the
I don't remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really, really cool and interesting because we are going to go up to Mind Flayers. If you guys want to know what we're talking about, it's not recorded because I actually visited Chris in Florida and played live. It was probably single-handedly my favorite live session of Dungeons & Dragons I ever played. It was just the two of us DMing, and I was DMing, and we were playing multiple. It was insane. It was insane. I almost got in the group with an intellect devourer. So close.
One roll.
Yeah, one roll.
One roll saved us.
Yeah. Another thing.
All right. Wasting time is nostalgia.
Yeah.
Reminiscing on old stories.
Yeah. That's
random
hilarious.
Tangent alert.
Random tangent alert for sure.
Yeah,
that's really funny. One thing that I was to get back to it was, you have my dungeons and stuff, and one of the things that I was trying to do to not slow the game down when we got to a large city. So the next topic of slowing down the games is large cities and towns and whatnot. There's so much to do there. There's so many people to talk to. You can slow the group down by using NPCs. NPCs can have a cart spill fruit on the ground. Now they're going to talk to that one NPC. That's going to be 15 minutes of encounter while you figure out what they're going to do. I printed out I actually printed out 5 lists of 20 random city encounters. Some of them were like magical, some of them were just things that happened. One of them was hilarious things that happened, like the lady just giving birth. Help me, I'm giving birth. And like everyone, what do? Well, you go into a pizza parlor and you murder everyone, Chris. And then you come out and then it turns out that you murdered whatever. But when you're in the city, one of the good things is that there is so much stuff. So you can just roll a table, and the table doesn't have to be a full-on huge encounter, but it can just be, you see a lady giving birth, there's a pizza shop type thing, there's a bar, and the city guards are looking for something. Those are hooks. And then sprinkle your random city encounters. There's a bird. There's people painting portraits. Maybe they're not even important encounters for the story arc, but the more engaging feeling the exploration is, and this, I guess, is a sort of like goes through everything that we've been talking about. The more engaging the investigation checks are, the more through the details of the DM, the more engaging and interactive the puzzles are, the more give your deaths a final sentence or whatever. All these things sort of like lead up to like the immersive quality of the time, because I feel like what we're talking about is, it's not necessarily, all these things can happen in 15 minutes. And that 15 minutes in a D&D session is not that long. It's almost like the setup and introductions and, hey, how you doing? Type stuff. Yeah. But if you make it interesting for the players, immersive enough, I feel like that you can almost do. It should be boring to a certain extent, but you can have immersion in the boring quality of it. So like,
yes,
Chris, roll me a d20, and you know, there's kids playing soccer. I did that.
Right.
You know.
Well, there's something I've been thinking about, and I think it goes to some of the slow aspects. And it's even when I'm not role-playing a NPC or engaging in the players with characters, you could still role-play the environment, the dungeon, the traps. Give it a feeling and that immersion, like it's alive. Like you hear the eerie sounds down the hall and the wind blowing. So imagine what you as the creepy old house would sound like and do and creak and where rats would be.
Yeah.
And throw in many, many rats and spiders and other things to scare and terrify your players.
I like that. So I feel like, to summarize the slowing down effect, it also depends, not to be Bill Clinton about it, but it also depends on what the definition of slowing down is. Because if you're talking about a lack of immersion, which is what I think I am mostly talking about. It's like you just come out of a dungeon that was the most immersive thing about Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeons and Monsters. You come out of there and now you have all these things you need to do. Creating a immersive reality for those players in the downtime no one is going to have. I got to tell you right now, no one had a bad time or a slowdown period in that city. I felt that. I felt that with the players. And that was really, really cool. I'm trying to get that back. It will come. But that was just a really, the whole Trigard, Act 8 on our Agoth Doomhand, that was a perfect example of just like, silly little things that happen. You're walking down the street of New York, essentially, except for it's fantasy world. You're going to see some crazy stuff, and you don't have to interact with all of it, but it builds into the environment. So that's my recommendation, I guess.
The way it felt that you ran that is as soon as we came into the city, we had the 3 or 4 sessions of feeling the struggle of getting through the city so that we could understand how the travel is like and how the craziness is. And then from there, once we got to our first place, then we could speed up and go a little faster through the city and just knew that it would take this amount of time and then would roll one random stupid encounter or something. But it was like that initial of like starting slow and then getting longer and then longer and then like, all right, what do you want to pick up? We can get you where you're going. And then you're just like, let's continue the story until we need to set a new tempo and a theme.
Yep.
And that's what I tried to do in the mountains is we went really slow in the beginning, like every little journey to try and get the feel of it. And then I tried to speed up your travel.
It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But then again, I was a player for the first time in forever. So, yeah, I would say we can both agree that I think immersion and keeping the immersion is probably the solution to the downtime effect and slowdown stuff.
Dungeon Doomhands, Let's Talk Lore, a podcast.